Hollywood loves to paint itself as immortal, but behind the scenes, even legends run out of time. Imagine pouring your soul into a story, only for fate to call cut before you do. Ever wonder what happens when a director doesn't make it to their own movie's ending? Grab your popcorn, because these stories aren't about retirement. They're about visions left unfinished, chaos on set, and what it really means when the camera stops rolling for good. Ready to see who never got their final take? Jean Eustache. Jean Eustache wasn't your typical French filmmaker. He was cinema's wild child, always pushing boundaries and shunning the polished sheen of mainstream movies. His films were raw, messy, and brimming with life, just like him. In 1979, while working on La Rosière de Pessac, Eustache was in his element, piecing together a slice of real life with the eye of a poet and the nerve of a provocateur. But his relentless energy caught up with him. Eustache never saw his final cut. He died during post-production, leaving his team stunned and his fans heartbroken. Imagine a set where the captain suddenly disappears. Crew members scrambled, actors felt lost, and the editing room became a shrine to his vision. Eustache's absence was a gut punch, and yet his unfinished work somehow became even more powerful, a haunting reminder of a genius gone too soon. The film was completed using his notes, but everyone knew it wasn't quite what he intended. Eustache left behind a cinematic legacy that's still dissected by critics and cherished by rebels. His story isn't just about a movie, it's about a man who refused to play by the rules, even when fate had the final say. Brandon Lee. You know the story of Bruce Lee, but his son Brandon's tale is pure Hollywood tragedy, one that blurs the line between movie magic and real-life horror. Brandon Lee was filming The Crow, an edgy, gothic revenge story set to make him a star in his own right. The set was already soaked in atmosphere and myth. Then, disaster struck. During a scene, a prop gun accident killed Brandon instantly, sending shockwaves through Hollywood and the world. Here's the kicker. Lee wasn't just acting. He'd stepped behind the camera for several creative decisions, shaping the film's visual style and tone. With his death, the set became a haunted place, full of what-ifs and unfinished dreams. The studio faced a gut-wrenching decision: shut it all down or find a way to finish the movie in his memory. They used body doubles, early CGI, and every trick in the book to piece together Brandon's last performance. When The Crow hit theaters, it was an instant cult classic. Fans weren't just watching a superhero movie, they were witnessing the final, unplanned chapter of Brandon Lee's life. The tragedy is forever woven into the film, making it unforgettable. It's a tough reminder that sometimes the scariest stories on set aren't scripted at all. Lee Thompson. Lee Thompson's name doesn't always headline the film history books, but behind closed doors, he was a studio favorite, cranking out everything from gritty thrillers to action-packed blockbusters. Thompson was deep into pre-production on Kinjit 2, a sequel set to dial up the action and grit of his previous hit. But life, unpredictable as always, called a wrap on Thompson's career before the cameras even rolled. Thompson's sudden death sent a jolt through the studio system. Cast and crew, already prepping for a shoot filled with late nights and high drama, suddenly found themselves with no director at the helm. Unlike other stories on this list, Thompson's exit happened before a single frame was shot, leaving his vision completely in the hands of producers and screenwriters. The project was shelved, then reimagined, but fans could sense the loss. The script lingered, unfinished, a ghost of what might have been. What's wild about Thompson is how many times he dodged disaster before. He survived budget cuts, ego battles, and the grind of studio politics for decades, but nobody beats the clock forever. Thompson's legacy is all about what he left behind: movies that still feel fresh and an unfinished sequel that fans still talk about. Sometimes, the real drama isn't on the screen. It's what happens when the director never yells action again. Miklo Jango. Miklo Jango was a director who made every camera movement feel like a revolution. His movies were complex, mesmerizing, and unlike anything Hollywood dared to attempt. In his final years, Jango was still pushing boundaries, deep into production on a new Hungarian film meant to cap his storied career. But fate intervened. He passed away before the project could wrap, leaving the film world in mourning. Jango's set was a hive of energy. filled with intricate choreography and long unbroken takes. When news broke of his death, production ground to a halt. Actors and crew wandered the set in shock, caught between grief and the urge to finish what their leader had started. The film's producers eventually tried to salvage what they could, piecing together scenes and stitching together Janso's notes, but everyone felt the absence. Here's the truth. Janso's work was never just about plot. It was about feeling, about ideas that couldn't be tamed or contained. His unfinished film stands as a testament to the risks artists take, pouring everything into a vision that sometimes outlasts them. Fans still debate what could have been, but one thing's certain, Janso's spirit was never meant to fade quietly. His final project remains one of cinema's great unfinished symphonies. F.W. Murnau. F.W. Murnau was the kind of director who changed cinema forever. If you've ever been chilled by a horror film or swept up by a romantic epic, you're standing in the shadow of Murnau's genius. He made Nosferatu back in 1922 and basically invented the modern movie monster. But even legends aren't immune to life's curveballs. While filming Taboo, A Story of the South Seas in 1931, Murnau's story took a tragic turn. Murnau was deep in the South Pacific, obsessed with capturing every drop of authentic island beauty for his film. But on the eve of his movie's premiere, he died in a freak car accident. He didn't even get to see his own masterpiece on the big screen. His sudden passing shocked the film world. The crew scrambled to finish post-production, heartbroken and running on fumes. Taboo was released with a sense of mourning, the final product marked by the absence of its creator. What's wild is how Taboo became both a haunting swan song and an unfinished letter to cinema. The film was critically acclaimed, but every frame carries the ghost of Murnau's unrealized plans. Even today, you can sense what might have been if fate had let him finish the story his way. Murnau's abrupt exit reminds us, sometimes even the brightest lights are gone before the credits roll. Hal Ashb. Hal Ashb was the ultimate Hollywood rebel, a director who never played it safe and refused to bow to studio politics. His films like Harold and Maude and Being There were weird, wonderful, and filled with a kind of sly wisdom you don't see every day. By the time he took on 8 Million Ways to Die in the mid-80s, Ashby was both a legend and a troublemaker. He dove into the project with his trademark passion, even as illness started to shadow his every move. Ashby died during post-production, leaving a pile of raw footage and an unfinished vision. The studio swooped in, desperate to salvage something commercial from Ashby's chaos. Editors patched the movie together, but everyone could tell it was missing the Ashby magic. The final product is a cult oddity, a hard-boiled thriller with flashes of brilliance and moments that just don't land. Here's the twist. For fans, 8 Million Ways to Die is more than just a movie. It's a glimpse of what happens when the system tries to contain a wild spirit and fails. Ashby's legacy is that of a true original, a filmmaker who didn't just color outside the lines, he threw away the coloring book entirely. His unfinished work is a testament to going out on your own terms, no matter what. Satoshi Khan. If you love animation that gets under your skin and makes you question reality, you owe a lot to Satoshi Khan. His films, Perfect Blue, Paprika, Tokyo Godfathers, are a wild trip through dream worlds and fractured minds. In 2010, Khan was deep into what was set to be his magnum opus, Dreaming Machine. The animation world buzzed with anticipation, expecting another classic from the genre's most inventive mind. But fate had other plans. Khan was diagnosed with cancer at the height of production. Even as he battled the disease, he poured every ounce of his energy into storyboards and detailed notes, determined to guide his team even if he couldn't finish the journey. When he died, Dreaming Machine was left half-complete, a map without a destination. Studios tried to pick up where he left off, but nothing could match the magic Khan brought to every frame. The project still sits unfinished, a bittersweet monument to a visionary's last wish. Fans pore over Khan's sketches, imagining what might have been. Every time you watch one of his films, you can feel the ache of stories left untold. Satoshi Khan's unfinished dream reminds us that even in animation, sometimes reality is the toughest script of all. John Singleton. John Singleton broke barriers the moment he arrived on the scene. At just 24, he became the youngest and first black director nominated for Best Director at the Oscars with Boys in the Hood. Singleton was a force, blending street-level realism with blockbuster energy in films like Poetic Justice and Shaft. By 2019, he was still at the top of his game, juggling TV, film, and producing. Then, out of nowhere, tragedy struck. Singleton suffered a major stroke and died during active development on several projects. His passing sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Singleton was in the middle of shaping a new wave of black stories for the screen, mentoring young talent and developing new voices. The TV show Snowfall was in full swing. Cast and crew scrambled to regroup, honoring his vision as best they could. What Singleton left behind is staggering: a generation of filmmakers inspired by his bravery and a landscape forever changed by his insistence on telling the truth. His unfinished projects hang in the air, reminders of how much further he could have gone. But here's the kicker: Singleton's impact can't be erased. Even unfinished, his story keeps pushing Hollywood to break new ground. Andrei Tarkovsky. Andrei Tarkovsky wasn't just a director, he was a philosopher with a camera, turning every film into a meditation on faith, memory, and human struggle. His movies are famously slow, deeply poetic, and unlike anything Hollywood would dare to make. In 1985, Tarkovsky started filming The Sacrifice in Sweden, battling not only the elements, but a mysterious illness that would eventually claim his life. He pushed through, determined to finish every shot exactly as he envisioned. Tarkovsky directed from a wheelchair, sometimes barely able to speak. The set became a strange cathedral, cast and crew working quietly, aware that their leader was running out of time. When he died soon after wrapping production, the editing was left to his closest collaborators, guided by Tarkovsky's notes and haunting vision. The Sacrifice stands as both a triumph and a tragedy. Every frame pulses with a sense of finality, a director pouring his last energy into a farewell to cinema. Critics and fans still debate its meaning, but everyone agrees. It feels like the work of a man who knew this was his last message to the world. Tarkovsky's unfinished journey is a testament to art created at the edge of life itself. Gary Winnick. Gary Winnick had a magic touch when it came to romantic comedies. Movies like 13 Going on 30 and Letters to Juliet weren't just box office hits, they were pure feel-good cinema that left audiences swooning. But behind the scenes, Winnick was all business, juggling multiple projects, mentoring young filmmakers, and squeezing every ounce of joy from each production. During the editing of Letters to Juliet, he was quietly battling a devastating illness, determined to see his film through to the very last frame. Winnick's drive was so intense, most of the crew didn't even realize how sick he really was. He worked through pain, making sure every shot landed just right. When he passed away in 2011, he left behind a nearly finished film and a shocked production team. The studio raced to put the final touches on the movie, honoring Winnick's vision as best they could. The result? Letters to Juliet became a bittersweet goodbye, released to heartfelt reviews and emotional tributes. But the loss went deeper than one film. Winnick's unfinished projects lingered in development limbo, and his absence was felt across Hollywood's rom-com landscape. For fans and colleagues, he was more than a director. He was the heartbeat of every set he touched. Winnick's story is a reminder. Sometimes even the happiest endings come with a sting. Bruce Lee. Everyone knows Bruce Lee, the martial arts icon who exploded onto screens and redefined what action movies could be. But many forget that Lee wasn't just a star. He was also the mastermind behind the camera. When he began work on Game of Death, Lee set out to direct and star in his most ambitious project yet, crafting epic fight scenes that would become the stuff of movie legend. The shoot was a whirlwind of energy, stunts, and Lee's relentless perfectionism. Then, the unthinkable happened. In the middle of production, Lee died suddenly, leaving behind unfinished fight scenes, scattered footage, and a crew in shock. The studio scrambled to salvage the film, splicing in old clips and using stand-ins for Lee's final moments. The result was a patchwork movie that could never match Lee's original vision, but it still packed enough punch to cement his legacy. Game of Death stands as both a tribute and a mystery, a glimpse of what might have been if Lee had lived to finish his masterpiece. Fans still analyze every frame, searching for clues to his creative genius. Bruce Lee's unfinished game is a reminder that even the fiercest fighters don't always get to finish the story. But what he left behind? Pure legend. Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Rainer Werner Fassbinder lived fast, worked faster, and changed cinema with every project he touched. The German auteur was a force of nature, turning out nearly 40 films in just over a decade, each one a daring challenge to the system. In 1982, Fassbinder was deep into the production of Querelle, a bold, visually stunning drama set to push boundaries yet again, but his breakneck pace caught up with him. He died before the film was fully completed. Fassbinder's sudden passing left the Querelle crew scrambling. Sets still buzzed with half-finished scenes, scripts marked up with his handwritten notes, and actors wondering how to proceed. The team pieced the film together using Fassbinder's outlines and previous conversations, but everyone felt the weight of his absence. Despite the chaos, Querelle was released to a shocked and divided audience. Some called it a fitting finale for a boundary-breaking career. Others saw it as a tantalizing fragment of what could have been. Either way, Fassbinder's relentless energy and creativity are felt in every unfinished moment. His story isn't just about speed, it's about burning so brightly that the world can't help but notice when the lights go out. Claude Sauté was the king of French emotional realism, capturing the quiet heartbreak and small joys of everyday life with a subtlety that made his films unforgettable. In the mid-1990s, Sauté was preparing his next film, pouring his usual care into casting, scripting, and planning every shot. But before production could begin in earnest, Sauté fell ill and passed away, leaving his latest project nothing more than a collection of notes, ideas, and dreams. His team was devastated. Sauté had been a mentor, a friend, and a steady hand in a sometimes chaotic industry. Colleagues tried to resurrect the project, but without the director's unique perspective, the story never got off the ground. What remains is a tantalizing glimpse at what might have been, a story half built in notebooks and conversations, missing the steady heartbeat of its creator. Sauté's influence still lingers, especially in European cinema. Fans mourn the film that never was, but more than that, they celebrate a career built on understanding people at their most vulnerable and real. Sauté's unfinished story is a reminder that sometimes it's the movies we never see that haunt us the most. Sergio Leone. When you think of sweeping cinematic grandeur, Sergio Leone is the first name that comes to mind. The mastermind behind The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in America, Leone was working on a new epic, Leningrad, The 900 Days, when he died suddenly in 1989. The film was to be his most ambitious yet, a massive war story set during the World War II siege of Leningrad, with international stars and a sprawling script. Leone poured years into research, meetings, and pre-production, determined to top everything he'd done before. But fate intervened before the cameras rolled. His death left the project in limbo. Studios tried to revive it, but nobody could channel Leone's vision or passion. The script remains legendary in industry circles, a mythic, unfinished symphony that filmmakers still talk about, dreaming of what might have been. Leone's story is a classic case of a giant taken down just as he was about to go bigger than ever. His influence is everywhere, from Hollywood blockbusters to indie darlings, but Leningrad stands as the great missing piece of his legacy. Sometimes the most legendary films are the ones that never made it to the screen. Louis Malle was a filmmaker who thrived on reinvention. He was never content to repeat himself, constantly bouncing between genres, from French New Wave masterpieces to provocative documentaries and Hollywood dramas. By the mid-1990s, Malle was already a legend and gearing up for his next film, a return to form that had fans and critics buzzing. Then, without warning, illness struck, and Malle's latest project was left suspended in pre-production, nothing more than sketches and casting wish lists. His death shocked the industry. Colleagues who'd worked with him described the eerie quiet that followed. Scripts gathering dust, crew calls abruptly canceled, actors suddenly without direction. The unfinished project became the subject of rumor and regret, a cinematic ghost story whispered at film festivals. While others attempted to pick up the pieces, everyone knew it was Malle's unique spark that made his films unforgettable. Louis Malle's legacy isn't just in the movies he made, but in the questions he left behind. Every unfinished project is a window into the next reinvention that never arrived. For cinephiles, his empty director's chair is a reminder that true visionaries always leave us wanting more. Ken Russell, If there was ever a director who could turn the ordinary into the outrageous, it was Ken Russell. Known for films like Tommy and the Devils, Russell was fearless, controversial, and never met a taboo he couldn't explode on screen. Even in his later years, he was still cooking up new projects, one wild, ambitious script after another. But fate cut his comeback short. Russell died in 2011 while developing a new feature, leaving the project barely started. Russell's sudden exit sent a ripple through the industry. He'd always been the director with a wild idea just around the corner. Now, those ideas would never see the light of day. His last project became legendary for what it could have been, a surreal, genre-bending spectacle that only Ken Russell could have delivered. Crew and cast who were attached to the project told stories of Russell's manic creativity, his infectious laughter, and his relentless drive. Russell's death left his final script unfilmed, a monument to a lifetime of chasing cinematic madness. For fans, the loss wasn't just about one movie. It was about the possibility of one more wild ride with the master of excess. Russell's unfinished project stands as a wild, unwritten ending to a career that never cared about boundaries. Travis Wilkerson never played it safe. His documentaries pulled no punches, digging into America's ugliest secrets and refusing to look away. In the late 2010s, Wilkerson was working on a new film, an intensely personal, politically charged documentary that had the indie scene buzzing. But as production ramped up, tragedy struck. Wilkerson died unexpectedly, leaving his latest work barely half-finished. The loss hit hard among documentarians and activists alike. Wilkerson's raw approach inspired a generation to use film as a weapon, and his final project was supposed to be his boldest yet. His crew tried to piece together what he'd left: scattered interviews, half-edited footage, notes scribbled in margins, but nothing could fully replicate Wilkerson's voice. The unfinished documentary became a legend in underground circles, screened at festivals in rough-cut form, and discussed as a lost classic. Wilkerson's passing was a gut punch for anyone who believed movies could make real change. His unfinished film is a haunting reminder. Sometimes the truth is so fierce, it refuses to be contained even by its creator, John Polson. John Polson made his mark as both an actor and director, with a knack for edgy thrillers and tense dramas. He was gearing up for what he hoped would be his biggest film yet, gathering a cast and crew that trusted his vision completely. Early production was electric, scripts flying, sets buzzing, all eyes on Polson's steady leadership. Then, in a twist no one saw coming, Polson died before principal photography could even finish. The loss was sudden, raw, and left a crater in the middle of the production. The crew faced the impossible: continue without their director, or walk away from months of planning and passion. Ultimately, the project was abandoned. The sets were taken down, the scripts filed away, and the industry moved on, but not without a sense of loss for what could have been. Polson's unfinished film is a reminder that, in the end, movies are as fragile as the people who make them. His story leaves us with a sense of mystery and a hunger for the movie the world never got to see. Paul Hunter made his name directing music videos that became instant cultural touchstones. Think groundbreaking visuals for Madonna and Eminem. Hollywood took notice, and soon Hunter was tapped for major feature projects. While working on a new film, Hunter's energy was infectious, his ideas flying fast and wild. But in the chaos of early production, disaster struck. Hunter died unexpectedly, and the entire project ground to a halt. The studio, banking on Hunter's unique eye and energy, scrambled to figure out a way forward. But you can't bottle lightning twice. Without Hunter's guiding hand, the film never came together, and the unfinished footage was shelved. Colleagues described it as losing the captain of a ship in a storm. No matter how skilled the crew, the journey just wasn't the same. Hunter's name lives on in the music video world, but in Hollywood, his unfinished film is a what-if that stings. Sometimes, the greatest talents are the ones the world never quite gets to see in full. Hunter's story is proof that even in an industry full of risks, some losses hit harder than others. John Cassavetes. If you love movies with guts, grit, and heart, you owe a debt to John Cassavetes. The man rewrote the rulebook for indie cinema, turning low budgets and raw emotion into gold. In 1986, Cassavetes was deep into the editing of Big Trouble, a dark comedy that was supposed to be his big studio comeback. But his body had other plans. Illness struck hard and fast, and Cassavetes died before the film was fully finished. Imagine the pressure. A maverick director, famous for doing things his own way, suddenly gone while his latest project still sat in pieces. The studio rushed to finish Big Trouble, making choices Cassavetes might have hated. The final cut felt awkward, missing the touch of the man who gave every story a pulse. Some critics called it a mess, others a misunderstood swan song. Either way, the movie became a legend for all the wrong reasons, a what-if, frozen in time. Cassavetes didn't just leave an unfinished film. He left a blueprint for generations of filmmakers to break free, take risks, and tell the stories nobody else would. His unfinished work is a lesson in creative chaos and a reminder that even the greatest don't always get to sign off on their own masterpiece. So, what's more haunting than an unfinished film? Maybe it's knowing just how close these directors came to delivering something unforgettable, only for fate to call cut. Hollywood may be built on dreams, but these stories prove the real can snap at any moment. Which of these unfinished projects do you wish you could have seen? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and share this wild list. The final take? Sometimes the best stories are the ones we never got to watch.